I'm working on this 1961 wheel horse, model 401. In the last video, I got the front end parts together and the center section hood support on there. Now I'm going to work on the steering shaft. There's some grease in the middle here I have to get. The shaft is all torn up here. It looks like there was no lubrication at all for a while. I've never seen that before. Seems like if it was bound up that bad, you'd notice something wrong with the steering when you were driving it. All I can do here is remove the high spots and smooth it out some. There's some old grease packed in the gear teeth here, so first I'll get the chunks out. Then I'll degrease it along with these other parts. Here's something I do for my tractors. This is the upper set screw collar that goes on the steering shaft. If you make the hole bigger, then it'll slide over that old paint on the shaft. I'm only making this 5/1000ths of an inch oversized, so it'll clear that old paint. If you had nice paint on your tractor, I'd make the hole a little bigger so you don't scratch your paint if you have to take it apart for some reason. On the lower set screw collar for the steering shaft, I just got done sanding one side flat and forgot to turn on the camera. Here's a different one I had on the shelf. This is what it looked like before I sanded it. This gear fits in this tube here, and the set screw collar stops the gear and the steering shaft from going down too far. That's why they're all worn on the outside edge. So if you sand that flat, you have a new surface for it to wear on. Here's the lift lever parts. I put the nuts and bolts back in the holes when I took it apart. The lift lever has some old grease on it. I'll use some gum out on that. If you have a 1961 model, the washer goes on first. In 1960, they didn't use a washer. I talked about that some and showed some pictures from the parts book in part 2 of this series when I took it apart. Here you have to push down on the release button and slide the curved part into the handle to get it all in position. This set screw collar holds all that in place. Make sure everything's seated against the frame. And the stuff should move freely without any sideways movement. I'm going to work on this clutch linkage next. When I took this apart, I couldn't get the cotter pin out, so I cut both ends off and filed them down flush to get this thing out of the clutch arm. These threads need cleaned up too, so I'm going to wire brush the thing first. Well, that's not moving at all. I can see the threaded part of the rod twisting. I don't want to damage that, so I'm going to try something else. It's a bummer to burn the paint off, but I'd rather save the threads. I see a lot of people heating things to get them apart, but not that many people cool them off quickly after heating them. It's winter time around here, so I'm going to stick it in the snow. Well, that thing's pretty much loose already. It's cooling it off quickly that makes a difference. Okay, now I'll try the same thing on this cotter pin. I pulled on this with pliers and tried leveraging it out with side cutters. That frequently works, but it wouldn't budge. And look at that, when I quenched it after heating it, it didn't take hardly any force at all to get it out. I wire brushed the threaded rod, but I didn't run a tap through this part. If it'll screw all the way up on the threads, that's all I'm going to do to it. The cotter pin hole in this end is a tighter fit. That's why they're the first to get rusted into place. I leave the head up a little bit because the spring attaches in that hole. The spring goes from this tab to the cotter pin to pull the linkage forward. I bend both ends of this cotter pin over because that spring's going to be pulling on it. When I'm ready to adjust the linkage, I'll remove the front pin and turn the rod to make the adjustment. I'm going to clean up this lift cable next. It goes through the frame and connects to the lift lever there. It's got the original clevis pins on each end, and I'll get some new cotter pins for them. First is the wire brush, but I want to get these clevis pins out of here and do them separately. Okay, I have some new cotter pins here. Everything else is ready to go. This lift cable has two bends in it, and those bends are caused by the top of the transmission here and the bottom rear of the engine block where the cable goes under the engine. If you have it the wrong way, the front will be too short when you line up the bend with the transmission. So this one looks like it wants to go like that. This back section has to go through a hole in the toolbox, but I don't have the toolbox ready yet. I'm going to connect the cable to the hitch just to keep the hitch from hanging low. That looks okay. There's a hold down bar under one of the seat spring bolts, and when that's installed, it'll hold the outer jacket of that lift cable in place while you're moving the lift lever. I'm going to spray it down with WD-40 like everything else, Maybe I should have hung it vertical and sprayed some down the jacket. I'm gonna coat it down, spray some in the end, and work it back and forth some. Well, that's as far as I'm going this time, and here's what it looks like. The next few videos I put out will be about something else, 'cause it's winter time around here, and I'm going to be doing some indoor things for a while. When the weather warms up a little around here, I'll pick up where I left off. Alright, that's it.